Hi friends, welcome to this online tutorial. In this tutorial, I will be showing you how to draft the basic bodice block for children, for girls. So, the measurements we'll be working with is chest circumference 24 inches, waist circumference 25 inches, half length 12 inches, shoulder length of the girl is 11 inches. And then this is my pattern that I'll be using to draft. I'll go ahead and explain the markings. This is the top line. The top line is the point at which all measurements begin. Now this is my center front CF and this is my center back. That is my front panel, my front block. This is the center. And now point O is the point in which all measurements for my front block will be based on. And then so my point O equally for the center back is where all measurements for my back block is centered on. Okay, so the length of my pattern is the length of the half length of the child, which is 12 inches. The half length, that is what I indicated here. The half length of the child is what I'm using for the length of the pattern. Now looking at our measurements, now the chest circumference is 24 inches and the waist circumference is 25 inches. Now 25 inches is bigger than 24 inches, so I'll be basing the width of my pattern on 25 inches. If it happens that the child you're working with has a bigger chest circumference than the waist circumference, it is which either one is bigger is what we will be using to now define the width of your pattern. So the waist that I'm working with is waist 25. So the pattern we are working with have the waist measurement. So what I did here was I did 25 divided by 2 gives me 12.5. So if you notice on my pattern, what I have here is 14.75. So what I did was I added that extra inches for my margin. That is why I wrote here waist divided by 2 plus the margin. So 12.5, if I was to base on that, 12.5 is the waist of the child. So the excess what I have there is the margin. You can choose to leave your margin 1 inch, 2 inches, depending on the pattern that the style that you will be working with. Now, in the case of what we are doing, the margin is just for tutorial purposes. I actually, you can use this margin to put your darts, to put your wrap allowance, whatever you want to do with it. But I'm just going to leave it a simple bodice. But I needed to show you that a margin is needed in your pattern when you are drafting. Okay, so the first thing that we will be doing is to impute the neck size, because it is from the neck size that we are going to base every other measurement. So to get the neck size, you can go ahead and measure the neck size of the child you're working with, but I usually have a method that I use, which is the chest circumference of the child divided by 12. So the chest that we are working with is 24. So 24 divided by 12 gives me 2 inches. So that is the 2 inches that I will be basing my neck size on. So I come to my center front and I measure my 2 inches. Remember that point O is where all measurements are based. So I input my 2 inches here. Now I'm going to use these 2 inches to square the neck point, to form a box, with that same 2 inches. So I come along the center front and I mark my 2 inches. And I go in and I mark my 2 inches. Why I'm doing that is that I want everything to be a perfect square there. I want to have a perfect square there. So let me go ahead and use the marker so that you can see clearly. So I'm going to come in with my curve ruler and now draw out my neck outline. So when you are doing this, please, you need to understand that along your center front, your outline should be at 90 degrees. So I now go ahead and I roll my neckline. Now going over to the back, I'm going to put the same neck width, which is 2 inches. But my neck depth is going to be 1 inch. The neck depth at the back is not usually the same at the front. So I'm using that 1 inch to equally roll my line so that I can have something perfect there. So I will go ahead and roll my neck line. Now, this is called your neck point, NP. Here is equally your NP, your neck point. So the next thing I'm going to do, having done that, is for me to go ahead and input my shoulder size. The shoulder length that we are working with is 11 inches. And shoulder is usually divided by 2. So from my point O, I'm going to be inputting 5.5, which is 11 divided by 2. So I mark my 5.5 inches there. And I come from my point O at the center back. And I also input my 5.5. Now, we need to understand that the human shoulder is not straight. It's not straight. So I'm not going to use it on a straight line. I'm going to give it a slope. So from where the shoulder is, I'm going to create a slope of 1 inch. 1 inch. So I am also coming down on the neck, on the back by 1 inch. That is the slope at which the shoulder is. So I'm going to connect from my neck point to where I have that slope. 1 inch. So I'll go ahead and do likewise to the back. Now that becomes my SP. SP. SP, that means my shoulder point. Okay. Now having drawn out that outline, the next thing that we are going to input is the chest line. The chest line, or by which the armhole is based. Now there is a formula I usually use also for that, which is the chest divided by 2. Sorry, the chest divided by 6 plus 1 inch. If it were to be an adult bodice, I would say plus 1.5. So the chest we are working with is 24. 24 divided by 6 gives us 4 plus 1 gives us 5. Sorry, 24 divided by 6 gives us 4 plus 1 gives us 5. Okay, so from my neck, my shoulder point, I'm going to come down by 5 inches from that calculation that we just had. 5. So for me to have a straight line, I will measure from the top line what that is. That is 6. I'm doing that so that I can be sure that my line is straight. So that line fixes the chest line and the armhole line. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do, having done that, is for me to input the same width that I used here for my shoulder, which was 5.5. I'm going to mark out that 5.5 along this line. Now, why am I doing that? Is for me to be sure that my line is straight. So I'm marking that, then I connect my SP to that point. So I'm going to do likewise to the back. On my armhole line, I'm going to input the shoulder length, just so that I have it straight with here. Okay, so that fixes our armhole line. So we are now going to go ahead to input the rest of the circumference, because our armhole curve will be based on the circumference of the chest. Now the chest circumference that we are working with is 24. So 24 divided by 4. Remember that this is a quarter pattern that we are doing. That's why we are dividing it by 4. So 24 divided by 4 gives us 6 inches. That is the 6 inches beginning from my point over the center front. That is my 6 inches. So I mark it there. Then I come to my waistline. The waist that we are working with is 25 inches. So 25 divided by 4 gives us 6.25 inches. So on my waistline, I'm going to input 6.25. 6.25. So I go ahead and I connect them. I link them together. You can use a straight line ruler. You can use a curve ruler. Okay. So I will do the same to my back block. So I'm coming here along the armhole line to fix my chest circumference, which is 24 divided by 4, giving us 6. And on the waistline, this is the waistline, 25 divided by 4, giving us 6.25. So that's the 6.25. So I go ahead and I connect. That line fixes the side seam. Okay, so what is remaining now is for us to input the armhole curve. So on my center front, I come to my armhole line. I have a width of 5 inches. So I'm going to find the midpoint of my 5 inches. Let me use my pencil first. Okay. So 5 divided by 2 to fix the midpoint is 2.5. So that is my 2.5. Along my 2.5 mark, I'm coming into the pattern by 0.5 inch, half an inch. Okay, having done that, I'm going to connect the midpoint to my shoulder point on a straight line. And using a curve ruler, I'm going to connect that midpoint to my underarm point here to be able to fix in the armhole curve. So I'll now go in now with my marker. I hope we got that well. Okay, so I'm going to do the next on the back. Now for the back, I'm also going to find the midpoint, which is 2.5. Now from that 2.5, I'm not going to go in. I'll just connect. I'm not going to go in like I did to the front. I'll just connect from that point to my underarm point. So that fixes the armhole line for the back block. I hope the tutorial was easy to understand. I will advise that you keep looking at it, practice along, That is just what it takes for you to make a basic bodice block for a girl child. Should you want to know how to make it for an adult, you can check our earlier videos. You will see what we did, and then I'm waiting for you to do your practicals and then to send me comments where you have challenge. Thank you. Bye.